I'm Sarah, a tutor at Accountancy Learning, and in this video I'm going to take you through the Tax Processes for Business AAT Sample Paper 1 Task 3. Task 3 is all about the recovery of input VAT. So our first statement here that we have to complete is a business is partially exempt if it makes a mixture of, and then we're given 4 options. So to be partially exempt, it's got to have some form of taxable supplies. And it's also got to have some form of exempt supplies as well. So when we look through these 4 options, standard rated and 0 rated supplies wouldn't make them partially exempt. Taxable supplies and exempt supplies. So we've just been saying that. So they have some taxable supplies and some exempt supplies. So that's going to be the answer to our statement. For the other 2, reduced rated and 0 rated supplies, so again, there's no exempt supplies in there at all. And taxable supplies and supplies outside the scope of VAT, again, there's nothing exempt about all of those. The supplies outside the scope of VAT are completely different. They're not exempt supplies. Going on to part B, we're told that a VAT registered business has sold a van on which the input tax was blocked at the time of purchase. So that's an important point in this question. Then question B asks us to identify whether the following statements about the sale of the van are true or false. So the first one is no output tax is charged as the sale of the van is exempt. So for this part of the question, this bit here that we highlighted at the start is important, because if the input tax was blocked at the time of purchase, it makes the sale of the van exempt for VAT purposes. So that would make this statement true. The second statement we're given is no output tax is charged on the sale of vehicles. So this is false, because there are times when output tax can be charged on the sale of vehicles. It's just in this particular question, the van that was sold had the input tax blocked, so it becomes exempt. But there are other situations where output tax can be charged on the sale of vehicles. The next part of the task then says Mabry Limited is VAT registered. It supplies one product and recovers input tax on business transactions. Every VAT period, Mabry Limited receives a VAT refund from HMRC. So normally a business would be paying out to VAT. It's normally a liability of the business to pay out to VAT because they're making taxable supplies. And usually it would be charged at 20%. However, there are some circumstances, just like Mabry here, where they can supply taxable products, recover the input tax, and receive a refund from HMRC. So in order for a refund to be available, the input tax has to be greater than the output tax. So because the business supplies one product and recovers all input tax, it must mean that the product that they supply is 0 rated. So they don't collect any tax because it's 0 rated, but they can recover input tax on their business transaction. Now, the exempt supplies, if it was exempt, would mean that you wouldn't be able to recover that input tax on your transactions. But because you're doing 0 rated supplies, you can. So the next question then, we have got 3 VAT registered businesses below. The first part of the question is to identify whether the following input tax can be recovered, whether it's blocked or partly blocked. And the second part of the question is to calculate the amount of input tax which can be recovered for each transaction. And here we need to round down to the nearest penny. And really importantly, if your answer is 0, we must enter 0.00 to pick up the marks. So over at the side here, I've put the options that you'll have in your drop down for this section here. So we can start having a look at the transactions. So Eli is a sole trader who works as a taxi driver. She has purchased a car for £30,000, including VAT at standard rate. The car is used for business purposes only. So we can have a little look here and bring up some information from the reference materials to help us with this question. So remember, in your exam, you've got your box on the right-hand side to open the reference materials. You can go in and out as much as you like. So this first transaction then, we can see that the car is for business purposes only. VAT is at the standard rate. So the first part of the material that we've got is that input VAT can only be recovered on cars if it is wholly for business use. So there's no private use at all. So that applies to the transaction that we are looking at here. Car is used for business purposes only. So that means we can recover input tax. We're told that it was £30,000, including VAT. So we will have to work out what our VAT figure is. So £30,000, and again, depending on which way you work, you can either divide it by 120 and then multiply by 20, or you can divide by 1.2 and multiply by 0.2. And when you've done that, it comes out at 5,000. And remember, we need to put it to the 2 decimal places because we're rounding to the nearest penny. The second one then is PY Limited leases a car for its sales director. The monthly leasing cost, including VAT at standard rate, is £376.80. So for this one then, we're leasing a car and standard rate VAT. So let's look at our reference material. We can see that when cars are hired or leased, 50% of the input VAT can be recovered. So we can have this as partly blocked input tax. So we're not able to recover the full amount. We're told that it's £376.80. So again, we would either divide it by 120 multiplied by 20, or divide it by 1.2 and multiply it by 0.2. But remember, we're only doing 50%. So you then have to divide it by 2, which would give you a figure of £31.40. The last one then is Dennis is a self-employed builder who uses a commercial vehicle for business. Dennis incurred £1,504.80, including VAT at standard rate, on repairs to the vehicle, which were invoiced to his wife. So some key elements of this question then. So first of all, the thing that you come across is commercial vehicle for business use. So you feel like straight away that you're going to be able to do something with the VAT on this because it's for business use. However, we're talking about repairs, and importantly, that they were invoiced to his wife. So they've been invoiced to a separate person rather than him. So he's not going to be able to claim through his business that VAT because the invoice has gone to his wife. So actually, although the commercial vehicle is for his business use, it's blocked for VAT because it's invoiced to his wife. And now remember here, we need to finish off this question by remembering this bit up here is to put 0.00. So moving on, we now need to have a look at the next question. And we're told that Alfie is a VAT registered sole trader. His car has 75% business use. We have emissions of 153 per kilometre. The business has paid for fuel totalling 720, including VAT at the standard rate for the VAT quarter ending the 31st of December 2023. Then we're told that Alfie reclaims all of the VAT on the fuel and accounts for private fuel by using the appropriate fuel scale charge. And the question asks us to complete the following statement. The correct VAT on the fuel scale charge for the quarter to 31st of December 2023 is, and then we're given some options. So we need to have a look at the fuel scale charge here. So first thing I'm going to do is bring up the parts of the fuel scale charge that we're going to want. So I'm bringing in the headers here because it's quite a big table. So just to save some space, I will put in the bits that we need. There we go. So let's have a look at what we're given. So first of all, because we're using the fuel scale charge, we need to take the emissions into account. So we round down our emissions when we're looking at the fuel scale charge. So we've got 153. So that's going to fall into this line here of 150. Now we're told that we're working on the quarters, so we do VAT quarters. So therefore, we're going to be looking at this section here. So our VAT inclusive consideration is 368. So be careful when you're doing these questions. Remember, the figure that you're given as the fuel scale charge is VAT inclusive. So we then have to work out the VAT. So 368 is your gross amount. And again, you can divide by 120 times by 20, or you can do it the decimal way. Divide by 1.2 and multiply by 0.2. This will then give you the answer of 61.33. Don't get confused in the question because they're giving you what they've paid for fuel as 720, including VAT. That's irrelevant because we're going to be using the fuel scale charge for the private fuel.